You're listening to All Things 3D, where we talk about the world of fabricating, designing, and capturing in the third dimension.
Cartilaginous, fleshy, flappy, wondrous. What you may not realize is that your ears are quite unlike anyone else's. Completely unique, in fact. Which is why we created this, the Normal app. You take a photo of each ear and send it to us. We send you back a pair of earphones formed to the exact specifications of those special places affixed to either side of your head. Manufacturing the perfect likeness of an ear is not for the amateur. The work is arduous, puzzlingly complex, and produces peculiar aromas. May I please introduce you to the tailor? He personally crafts each pair of normal earphones with his dexterous fingers. And it fits like a damn glove. Introducing Normal, custom 3D printed earphones exquisitely tailored to your ear hole.
Morning. Hi, this is Mike Balzer and All Things 3D, and I'm by myself for a little bit today because, again, Chris is out with an emergency in his family and will not be making it today. However, I have been in contact and things have stabilized. However, they were serious. So, again, he won't be joining us. James will be joining us a little bit later. Like many people, he has a real job, so he'll be joining us later. We also have Nikki Kaufman, who is the CEO of the product you just saw, and that's the Normals. In fact, that's what I have in my ears. I actually have become quite attached to them. They're very comfortable, and the most important thing is they do not fall out of your ears. So on that note, it looks like James is joining us now. Hello, James. How are you today?
Hey, how's it going, Mike?
Okay. So he's in his command chair again. So glad you can make it. I know that you rushed to get here, but go ahead.
Oh, I was just agreeing. But I'm here.
Okay. All right, so let me go back into it. So again, our special guest today, our guest crasher, is Nikki, the CEO of Normals, and she'll be joining us around 10 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, which will be about 30 minutes from now. And prior to that, we're going to go through some news items. We've got plenty today. Also, keep in mind that we've got some video to show as well as some links later on. I spent about 3 days at MakerFaire, and there was a ton of great stuff out there as well. Okay, on to the first item today. So one of the things that I have actually had issues with in the past is, so James, do me a favor, go ahead and mute yourself until we're ready to talk. Okay. It's a product called Printable, which is in beta right now, and it appears to be a cloud-based, what do you call it, modeling application. But one of its unique features, as mentioned by 3Ders.org, again by Simon, great article, Simon, is that you can now reverse the process. Normally you create an STL object code or whatever and you convert it into the G code, but it's always a little difficult and go in the reverse position. So they seem to have cracked this, and actually they talk about it a little bit later, but it allows them to go ahead and take the G code and then convert it back into an STL or a model or a mesh file. So this is very interesting and obviously a new feature. You can go ahead and read the article. It'll be in the show notes, but it goes through the entire process. It also does other things. You can identify by going through an STL or OBJ out to a specific type of 3D printer, and then selecting your output and then printing it. So it's an interesting feature, and it says that it'll convert the G code. You can download it and then send it directly to your printer. So it does it on both ends. And there's a little video here that we can play. So it appears that they're uploading the file right now. And then you can obviously determine your wall thicknesses, and then you create the G code. Actually, it's saying that you created a 3D file. So it goes through the entire process. Again, this will be in the show notes, so you can go ahead and go out to it. I also have a link that I can show you right now of their actual site. And it tells you some of the advantages of using their converter and their tools. One is solidity, intersecting object, flip faces, non-manifold. You know, my go-to product in the past has been NetFab, so I'm going to be trying this out soon to see how well it works for me. But obviously it's trying to look at a lot of new features, supporting them. What's kind of interesting, it's going to support transparency, hollowing, filling, and then speed and quality, so you get variations there. So it looks like they're really trying to come out with a great product. Again, as I mentioned, it's cloud-based, so if you're concerned about the privacy of your files, it may not be the direction to go. However, the advantage of it is that you can use the cloud in order to use the performance from that and not your own machines. So files should come back quickly. And as you're aware, most G-code files aren't that big. All right, well, moving on to the next item, since I'm also going to be playing Chris. You know, and James, if you've got anything to mention, you can go ahead and unmute and go ahead and mention it if you want. Okay, I get a nod. Okay. So the next item is, if you're still kind of on the fence because 3D printing is too expensive for you, there are some new options out there. I saw this the other day. How about a printer kit? So I'm assuming that you have to assemble it for $77. So under $100, you can do 3D printing. That is intriguing. Now, if you take a look at the image behind me, it doesn't look like it's that sophisticated. Essentially a stepper motor. I don't know if the other stepper motors are inside. I guess I can play this here to give you an idea. But essentially a plastic shell, metal frame. Here we go. So I can see the vertical or the Z stepper in the background there. But it's kind of cute. And for $77, it's almost like a compulsive buy. They should put this like at the end of your checkout stand. Oh, I need a printer today. Oh well. So obviously it looks pretty interesting. I was thinking it might be a Kickstarter or Indiegogo, but it doesn't seem to say either of those things. So I'll do a little more research and find out where I can find it and provide that in the show notes. So I think it's kind of funny that I'm not seeing any more than just the bed and one stepper motor. Oh well, seems very unique. James, what do you think? Go ahead and unmute yourself. I feel like I'm talking to myself here. So what do you think? I still can't hear you. No, now we've lost you completely.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay, okay. I was asking if it was for real. I mean, this is something that I would buy right now, actually. I'm just getting into 3D printing, and this seems like a winner for $77. It's a no-brainer.
Now, what's interesting is it gives you a euro of 69, so I'm wondering if it's actually in this country or not. Well, why don't you do a little research on that, come back with something, and we can go from there. The fact that they've got a YouTube video kind of indicates to me that this might be for real. Actually, let me click on this.
Because everything that's on YouTube is for reals. We know that.
That's right. Mm-hmm. Well, here you go. So it appears that it is for real. €69 plus tax, and it shows you what the kit can, and then you can add it to the shopping bag. So I don't know how long. It says your order first week of August. Okay, so it appears that there is a delay, which I may have thought would be the case. But if you want to go ahead and order one, it looks like shipping date is in August. Okay, here's a nice little
It says in
illustration
stock.
here. Yeah, let me jump back to my screen. Yeah, interesting. Well, in stock, but not available till first week of August. Oh well. So if you look at the illustration here, it kind of shows the gantry. It's a couple of rails. It's not that sophisticated, but obviously they've simplified it. I don't know what kind of board. It might be a custom little controller board in the back. But as mentioned, for $77 or whatever the price is, €69, it might be worth the risk. So if you're going to get it, make sure you let us know what you think, James.
Sure.
All right, let's move on to the next item. So one of the things that I thought was kind of weird, and I've kind of brought it up before, and I've actually have the website or URL for Virtual Parts Bin, and that's a location that you can go out to look at parts. Let's say for cars, for furniture, for things around the house that you may have broken off a knob or something. And it looks like Lowe's has stolen my idea. No, frankly, I think a lot of people have thought of it. So it's not my idea, but I think it's kind of interesting that you've got a large company like Lowe's who's, I don't know if you have these in your area, James, but we have Orchard Supply hardware stores here. And I think it's kind of neat that they're going to offer something like that. I think where's it? Mountain View, California. So obviously you can go out there, look for parts, and then I don't know if you can only, it appears that you can only download it and then print it on your own printer. They won't have a printer there for you to print it on. And again, if you realize most 3D printing is still a slow process, so even if you could print it there, it would take hours, and most of us don't want to hang around in the store for hours, or at least I don't.
So are they charging for the downloads themselves, or?
It does not appear to be the case. I don't see that. It appears like it's a kiosk that you can go up to and maybe put in your email address. So maybe that's
I see.
The kicker there is that you have to provide them so you become part of their mailing list. But yeah, I think that's a unique thing. I think having something like that, as mentioned, I have the URL virtual parts bin because I think something like this is in need. Thingiverse is a great site. UImagine is a great site to go out to, but they cover a lot of different parts. So I think it's nice to be able to go to a location that's specific to things that you might be working around the house with. So I think this is a real interesting idea, and more hats off to them. We'll cover this a little bit more in detail. In the future, it shows that the software and service firm Authentitize and Singularity University Labs are the ones behind this. So I'll do a little more research, but kind of an interesting program.
It'd be kind of interesting if, like maybe for like doorknobs, they would have 3D parts with all different sorts of styles and selections, and then the intricate parts they would sell there, but you could get whatever style you wanted, take it home and print it. But I know metal's a little harder to do yourselves, but places like Shapeways you might be able to print it out at and have it shipped.
Who knows, they might have a relationship with Shapeways or one of these other fabricators. But yeah, I think it's an interesting take. As we know, Home Depot is selling the Dremel 3D printers, so a lot of these consumer-based hardware stores, large warehouse hardware stores are getting into this. So just another unique take on it. All right, on to the next item. I thought this was kind of interesting, but at the same time very vague. Again, thank you, 3Ders.org, and again, Simon. Simon seems to be all over the place today with the articles. But it looks like somebody has created, and they look... I don't know if they have actually any videos. I think there is one here that we can play, but they all look like mechanical drawings. It doesn't look like anything tangible has been created. But essentially, you put the part within this environment here that's behind me, and it uses kind of an inkjet nozzle type process, CMYK, in order to paint the object. So it's kind of like a paint booth. But it's very vague. There is no images or videos of the actual product. In fact, this actually looks like a model that was done in SketchUp, personally. So I'm a little concerned on how far away they are with it. Let's see if I can write this. Yeah, it's going to be a Kickstarter for the price of $2,262. So if you go out there right now, you can probably find out. So again, it'll be in the show notes. So I'm intrigued by it because it was something that I had thought of, that you could take standard inkjet processing and use it to paint things. And so maybe that's, you know, the direction they've gone to, and I'd like to see more of it. But from the illustration there, I don't know how far they've gotten into it.
Yeah, it looks like wishful thinking from the illustrations, but you never know.
Yeah, one of the things that supposedly Kickstarter is supposed to look out for is when you just come up with concept drawings, you should have an actual either, I don't know if they have to display it within their Kickstarter page or have to go to the Kickstarter program itself, but you're supposed to have a tangible working model in order to get on Kickstarter. Yeah. And from here, it doesn't even look like we've got any great renders or mechanical drawings. So
I wonder,
am a little leery.
Are you able to keep some things private between Kickstarter and yourselves, not to kind of let the cat out of the bag, if, as it were? You know.
Or I don't know. I'll be finding out soon. Not that. Yeah. I mean, I think by the time you hit Kickstarter, you really don't want anything private, except what I have found out from some of the people that I've had on the show, like Brad Hill, is that if you go out to Kickstarter, sometimes it gets leaked before you wanted it to, and I don't know how that goes about. But or they go out to 3ders.org or somebody else like that to keep something until the actual Kickstarter launch, and then they leak it because everybody wants to have the first article out. So I don't know about Kickstarter themselves, but as you know, I'm going to be starting my own Kickstarter soon, so I guess I'll find out. All right, on to the next item. Let's see what time we're at. You know, Nikki, if you're listening out there, I'm almost done with the news, so if you wanted to come in now and have time, you're welcome to do so. But we'll move on to the next item, and I'll get right into what do I call it? My Scanner Darkly. And this one is real interesting. And this was sent by one of our listeners / viewers. And what I find really cool about this little particular product is it is a ferro arm. And I don't know if you're familiar with this, but you know, there's multiple ways to scan objects, either through lasers or projected light or other techniques, but you can also use tactile response, like a servo arm. And this is somebody who's created it, and then if you look at it behind me, this is what you actually use to point or touch the object. And because it moves in the 3 axes, you can use it to literally identify points in space. And it is one of the more accurate systems, even though it takes a long time, in order to get proper, what do you want to call it, measurements in 3D space. And then obviously here's an example. The thing about the ferro system is that they're fairly expensive. So the fact that somebody's created one, you know, obviously it does look like a garage type system made out of, what does it say it's made of? Wood sheets. Which I think is kind of funny how a number of these projects start out as wood projects and then either go into plastics or some other form. But like many, it's a hybrid between wood and 3D printed parts. Those, I don't see what those are there, but they may be. What would you think those are, James? Do you think those are servos or?
Yeah, I'm not too sure. He does a lot of stuff by hands. I've seen the video before, but just the fact that it's created and somebody else could create it, it's pretty neat.
Yeah, and I don't know what the total cost would be, but I'm assuming whatever these are here, and I think if you go out to the Blogspot, they have a BOM or Build of Materials, so you can actually get the actual part there. So I'll obviously put those in the show notes or have this article there, but I think it's kind of neat. If we play the little video here. I'm sorry. It's funny, I also have the video sound playing in my ears. I just muted it, so sometimes I think somebody else is talking to me.
Yeah, I like when he started going up on top of the shelf. When he was doing stuff right there, I was like, yeah, no big deal. But when he actually picked it up and started, I think it's the oscilloscope or something he was measuring, I was like, wow, that's really cool. When he was doing all this, I didn't understand the big point of it, but
it may have been a calibration routine.
mm-hmm.
So there he's got a power supply, so now he can measure the points. But as mentioned, it's extremely accurate, but very, very slow, because literally you are taking points, and as you can see there, he's identifying them.
This was what was interesting.
So he's showing the 3D space of above as well.
Yep.
So
That's
very neat.
cool.
So I'm going to have to look into this. That looks pretty cool. And then he's showing how he's created the pieces and cutouts. Well, pretty neat. I think that it's just another source of interpreting information. As mentioned, this is extremely, or the Faro system is extremely accurate for doing point cloud capturing, and now you can make your own. All right, moving on to the next item. Well, thank the Chinese again. They're coming out with a $699 VR headset that looks obviously far less encompassing than something like the Oculus Rift or the set that's coming out by HTC and Steam, or Valve, I'm sorry. It looks like a pair of glasses with a little rubber area to cover or create a seal, I'm assuming, so that you can look into it. Supposedly it's going to be a 2K full HD, whatever that means. A lot of the panels today are 2K, but if that's per eye, that would be very interesting. So here's a render of it. Wow, very fashionable. So it's going to be identified. Oh, one of the people who wrote on this said, actually I think it was them, be careful how you type this and make sure your autocorrect is not on. So I'm delodal. I don't know how to, but obviously it could come up with another name that you may not want in print. But I think that's really interesting. It says it's going to be shown at CES Asia 2015, which is next week. So maybe I'll see if we can see another clip and some more information on it. $699, I can't say is too expensive, but if the Rift comes out, which they're also going to be doing a launch, I think next week as well, or actually the first week in June. The idea is that may be around $300 or $400. So this is still a little bit more pricier. However, it does look lighter, and if it does provide the same quality, that might be an interesting direction. It does says it has dual sets of sensors instead of just a single. It is a mobile system working on an Android. They say it works on, I want to say 4.4, so I don't even think it's Lollipop yet. So.
It seems such a small form factor.
Yeah, it does seem a little. So where's the battery? Which is a concern. If it's a mobile unit, how are they going about doing that? I have a feeling it's two separate stereo images, and if that's the case, yeah, that could be very cool. I have a system, I can't think of the name of it now, that I've had for 10 years now that used a couple of OLEDs, but there was like 800 by a 600 or something like that. So very low, but if it's 2K per eye, that could be pretty impressive. So we're going to look out for this. I think that's going to be something very interesting to kind of look into. Okay, so what else do we got? Oh, this is interesting. If you remember, James, was it 2 weeks ago? We talked about, we actually opened it, and the music we found out uh, I had to remove because the guy that was making this little demo on YouTube that I use as my opening didn't have full rights to it, so I had to remove the music itself. But the product was Night Cafe. Do you remember that, James? Had you
Uh-huh.
already? Well, it
Yeah.
appears he is now one of the entries, so he's actually in the running now in the what is this called? The Jam or the VR Jam Mobile of 2015. So
Great.
I was hoping for him to come on today, but obviously he might be too busy. But we're going to be doing an interview with him. I really want to know his whole process, and then, as you know, James, I'm working on my own system that I call NeoDVR that
Hmm.
I'd like him to convert it into an iOS application, so that, as you know, with my particular headset, you'll be actually able to walk around in it. So.
Yeah.
Um, so we'll see where we can go with that. But just
Walking
to
around
find
in
out.
paintings. That'd be really cool. Yeah.
Now, walking around in a painting, not just looking at it, being in the painting, which I
Yeah.
think is a
Yeah.
very cool process. It's a little trippy. If you haven't seen it, I'll go ahead and put it in the show notes again. But the cool thing is, if you're interested in VR, these are the finalists, and all of them have links that you can go out to. Uh, so head out there and take a look at all of them. A lot of them, especially if you've got the Samsung Gear VR, they have playable, downloadable files, so you can load them into your. Actually, if you remember, you can use the Note 4 or the new version, which works off the S6, so you can actually play them. In fact, he gave me a link, and I have it, but since I don't actually have the Samsung Gear VR, I can't play it yet. But I do have a link, so maybe next week I'll be able to talk about it. So I think it's kind of neat. So that's about it for our VR corner, I think. So let's go on into 3D and medicine. As you know, I spent last Thursday at, what was it? I've already forgotten, at Stanford doing a talk at MedXMakers with Monica and also two other people, Danny from BioBot. So remember we talked about that. That's what would you call it? A low-end bioprinter. It literally will print not cartilage, actually cartilage, as well as comes with a kit. There's a couple of things that'll print. So if you're into research or need something like that, it's a very compact unit, very similar. In fact, I made a comment about it, very similar to the Ultimaker 2 in size, which I thought was pretty cool. And it actually exists. He had it there at the show at MakerFaire as well in the MedX booth. So some of you who have gone out there may have actually been able to touch it. So it does exist. Pricing, if you saw the Stanford presentation, is very reasonable. If I remember correctly, what was it? Kit was for 700, and then do I want to say 1,200? I don't know if it was that cheap, but it was very reasonable in price, especially if you're in research and you want to be working with something like that. I really think so. So okay, so let's look into this next article, and thank you again, Simon. Man, he's on a roll this week. He brought in this article, and all of us take some form of medication or vitamins or so forth, and if you ever notice, they come in different colors and different shapes. And part of that is to provide unique shapes so that you can recognize them, especially if you're visually impaired, so that you're not taking something over and over again that might be lethal. But something that somebody at the University College London Pharmacy went through is, let's 3D print different shapes and then look at how well they're digested or absorbed. And it's pretty interesting, the results of it. They show the actual shapes here behind me. But then they have a chart here that talks about the surface, density, and then where do we go? Here we go, the constant surface. So this talks about the time of drug release. Notice the shape that is released the quickest, the pyramid. I mean,
Oh.
substantially. Notice that the cylinder, which is the normal process, has more of a, obviously not a linear curve, but it's a common bell or, a slope. But look at this one. I mean, it's an accelerated, what is it, at about 150 minutes. it's almost completely absorbed.
Wow. I was about to say I wouldn't want to take the pyramid one. It might hurt my throat, but
Well, that's
maybe.
what somebody else made the comment, but maybe there's a way of rounding it or smoothing it.
Huh.
Maybe we could talk to Nikki about that. But if you notice, the cylinder doesn't even have full drug release. It's only at 80%, and we're looking at 600 minutes. So I thought that was interesting, and the same thing with the sphere. And then if you notice the cube, notice the thing with edges seemed to do the best, except the toroid, or the torus, which is actually fairly round, and it does fairly well. So you've got a compromise there. So you know, if you're not familiar with a toroid, that's the thing that looks like a lifesaver there.
Yeah.
So maybe that will be in the future. But I thought this kind of neat to use 3D printing to create unique shapes and then measure the time. And then here we have constant surface and volume. And again, notice that it is more even for the pyramid, which is why probably the pyramid has such magical powers, as they say.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got about 10 o'clock. Nikki, are you out there? Are you willing to join us?
I'm here.
Okay. Have you been listening along?
I have, for part of it.
So I don't know if you watched this last part. Isn't that kind of neat? They're printing these drugs to see which ones get absorbed best. And I thought, well, Nikki knows something about this. And maybe they put a little coating on it. Okay, well, let's jump right to Nikki. Hi, Nikki.
Hi.
We met before at South by Southwest, and I've wanted to have you on because guess what I'm wearing?
You're wearing your normals.
My normal.
So am I.
Uh-huh. And I wore them for 3 days out at at MakerFaire, and literally I had forgotten they were in my ears and almost pulled out my ear again. And one of the cool things is I had forgotten before and I actually ripped one out, but you guys sent me a replacement very quick, found out that they pop on because you use coaxial connectors, smart on your part, and I'm back up and running, and I'm using them now. And one of the things I like is they have such a smooth frequency range. Not that I'm a hi-fi geek in any way, but actually I really like these. You know, it's one thing, just the 3D part of it. Okay, enough about that. Why don't you introduce yourself to us, Nikki, and then kind of tell us about the product.
Sure. So I'm Nikki. I started a company called Normal, and at Normal we make custom-fit 3D printed earphones. So they're earphones, and Michael's wearing them, so am I. They're earphones that stay in your ears. When you run, when you work out, obviously they have a microphone so you can talk on the phone, and they are built for you. We can actually build them in under 3 hours. So it's super simple. You can order from anywhere in the world. You download the app, which is available it's in iTunes or it's in the Google Play Store, and it'll prompt you to take a couple of photos of each ear while holding up a quarter, which we use for scale. And let me get one pair to show you.
Okay. And I've got your website behind me here too.
Okay, great. So you can also, you'll see if you're looking at the website, you can order from anywhere in the world by downloading the app, but you can also come to our headquarters. We're in Chelsea in Manhattan, and it's actually a store that's also our factory, that's also our headquarters. So you can actually watch the entire process. You can watch your product being printed, assembled, made, and you can actually even take part in that process. And you end up with something that looks like this. It's a customized carrying case. We laser etch your name or a nickname into it. And it opens up for easy, I don't know if you can see this, for easy cable management. It pops up like this. And actually, we make the case here as well. So only your normals fit in your case or your ears. You can't share cases and you can't share normals.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I need to go find my case.
The case, we actually laser cut the negative of your shape. So again, it's just, perfectly fitting case and perfectly fitting earphones. And that's it. It's all in for $199. That includes tax and shipping. And there you go.
Well, let me go back to the page here, and you have like a parts breakdown. And one of the things, as I mentioned already, that I really love about it, they have a smooth sound. You know, they're not too bassy, they're not too tinny, they just seem to be just right. I know that sounds like Goldilocks, but there's actually some truth to that. And the other thing is this coaxial connector. And it's the first time, obviously I don't buy a lot of expensive headsets, but I do have a pair of cans that I use for a lot of my work. that I can take apart, but this is the first time I've seen a coaxial connector being used that can allow you to pop these in and out. I was very surprised.
So we did that intentionally so that we could create a modular system that would help. I mean, right now we're making this product. There's actually a few different types of cables you can choose from, and having that coaxial connector allows us to pop on and off the cable. It will also allow us when there's a longer cable or a standard cable or a Bluetooth cable, you can actually, it all works within this system. And the other feature that allows it actually allows you to choose if you want to wear the cable down or if you want to wear it rotated so that it sits behind your ears. And some people prefer to wear their headphones like that. So we tried to build in a lot of different features that would help us make a product that was built for one person, but also at a mass scale, right? So mass customization. So we were looking for different things that would, again, enhance the design, enhance the sound, enhance the product, but also work for us at a mass customization level. And it works. So.
You know, for me, with my headsets, I usually break the cords because I put in my pocket. So this would be great just to get a replacement cord and have the earpieces.
Exactly. And also, the coaxial connector actually prevents that cable from breaking, because if you pull on it, what would happen is that actually the cable would detach before it breaks. Mm-hmm. So it actually is really for that. And subsequently,
I'll break it. Don't worry.
If you break it, normals have a lifetime warranty. So.
Oh, do they? Wow, that's fantastic.
So we really stand by our quality.
Okay, well, let's talk about the 3D part of this. Obviously, I'm a klutz, and it took me a while to actually do it. But you use a unique, we can't really call it a scanning system, or at least you told me not to call it a scanning system. But your app takes pictures of your ear, and you kind of show some examples, and then you send those off. I guess it does the app itself, and this app is available both on Android and iOS, correct?
Right, correct.
Okay, and so then it sends it to you, and then you have all these nice, fun messages that go along with it to keep you participating, unless you're like me and it takes several times and you just want to throw your phone across, but I'm clumsy. Or I should say I was probably thinking of a different way of how this worked, and I should have been more open-minded, which I wasn't. So, but I finally got it accomplished. So you have all these images. You want to tell us a little bit about your secret sauce, or you want to keep that kind of closed at this point?
Yeah, I'm not going to tell you our secret sauce because that is secret sauce, right? But I will say that, yeah, we don't do any scanning. It's just a photo, and we ask you to hold a quarter, which we use for scale. Really, we could use any object that we know the dimensions of. But we say quarter because it's easy to grab. And then, yeah, just based on that photo, it's enough information for us to get you that perfect fit. And when you say send it off, those photos are uploaded to our back end factory. The technology that powers this mass customization here is actually really incredible. And I always like to say that the back end of Normal is really beautiful, and it is. What we've built here is a operation and a facility that can support many, many products built for you end-to-end, one-to-one. And we're starting now with headphones, but I'm super excited about what's to come.
So you got other things you're going to be working on, huh?
Yeah. Can't talk about them, but we are working on other things. I mean, you could guess the branding is Normal, and the tagline is one size fits none. So we're keeping ourselves open to making lots of different products. But super excited about, we've been around now for almost a year. It'll be a year in July. And people like the headphones, and the process works, so we just need to get them in more folks' hands.
Well, hope I can help there. Well, they're really cool, and like I said, I had them around. Actually had your, I don't know, was it a 3-inch badge on the other side of my vest? So when people ask, what are those things in your ear with the funny thing? So I pulled them out. So
thanks.
Hopefully that did help.
Thank you for spreading the word.
Well, you have a great product here, so I don't have an issue in doing that. It's a fun little product. And, you know, one of the things that I mentioned early on, and I guess maybe I got used to it, is I felt that they were a little too rigid, and maybe they needed to be a little bit more flexible. But then I thought, well, maybe if they're too flexible, then they won't stay in as secure. And like I said, I was able to run around for 3 days. I mean, literally, as I said before, I keep these things in for 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
I got used to them. You know, I had some problems with my left ear, but the right ear has always been good, and sometimes I monitor with just my right ear anyway. But as you said, because of this customized portion here, it locks in literally, and they don't come out.
Exactly.
And if you do exercise in a gym, running or so forth, or like me, you're just klutzy and you snag the cable, well, could break the cable, but they don't pop out. And that's important, and a lot of times I'm spending my time putting things back in, and I don't have to do it with this. And I don't know if you saw any images of me there, but I looked like I was a cyborg. I had wires coming out of everything. So it was nice to make sure that everything was intact and never had to worry about my little normals. That's good.
Glad to hear it.
And plus, you guys have a really fun attitude there. Your little video that I opened the show with is quirky, which I think is kind of cool. The little talk through that you go through kind of is like a cheerleader saying, yeah, you can get it right. You know, everything was very positive, which I think is great.
We want to take the stance of, we deliver a premium product. It is a premium listening experience, but we also don't take ourselves too seriously. We want to be a brand that's approachable. It's sort of this notion of accessibility, approachability, both from a process, price standpoint, and just the brand. So, thanks for touching on that, because that is an important piece of what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, and I think it's a really good point. One other thing, technically, you use a Fortis 250, if you remember you telling me that.
We use 10 Fortis 250s.
That's true, 10 of them. Too bad my co-host Chris couldn't make it today, because when I told him that the last time, he had this look like, geez, because he's only got one, and he thought he was cool. But 10 of them, and if I remember correctly, they're like $50,000 or $60,000. So this has been a major investment for you, and obviously it allows you to get these things out fairly quickly. Now, knowing a little bit about the 250, which is a tray, do you wait to get a bunch of them together at one time and then print them? How do you go about doing that?
It's a really good question. So we tend to run our printers asynchronously because we're trying to deliver the product to the customer in as quick as possible. We'll typically print a couple at once. Sometimes we'll even do one at once. So if we're trying to deliver it to you in 3 hours, then obviously we cannot load the tray because the print time scales with with as many units are on there. So typically, if it's overnight, we'll batch some orders, but we try to during the day we'll run them asynchronously.
Well, that makes sense, and obviously it allows the person to come in and get theirs right away.
Yeah.
So how long does it normally take for the print process? Obviously, they're not very large, so I'm assuming it's probably not that long.
Yeah, the print itself takes an hour.
Okay. So behind me here, you see that I've got your store. Is this a store, or is this just a mock-up? I mean,
yeah, no, that's our store. That's the picture of the store. And if anyone's local, I encourage everyone to come whenever you can. We're open 7 days. It's in Chelsea. And again, the store is our factory, is our headquarters. So the 10 Fortis 250s actually line the perimeter of the store. So you see the entire process happening right in front of you.
Wow. Well, if I'm ever in that area, I'm going to make sure to visit you.
Please do.
Okay, so let's look at one other thing. Here's, obviously, for those hi-fi geeks out there, the audio profile, the bandwidth of it, and if you notice, it's fairly smooth, all the way up to 20 kHz, which is very important. At least they say it is. But that's very important. Now, how does this compare? A lot of people may have their little Apple earbuds, which a lot of people think are just mediocre. How would you compare yours to it from an audio perspective? Yeah,
look, we're proud of the sound that the product that we have. I do think it is in line with $200 price point products, and I also think that we approach it in a unique way because of the fact that it is custom fit. It actually helps deliver that sound more precisely and actually helps enhance the experience. So.
Well, and I would agree. They're the best earbuds that I've ever had. So, again, thank you, Nikki. I appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for your time. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Well, thank you.
Okay, talk to you soon.
All right, so let's, bye-bye. Okay, so let's move on. So we covered kind of 3D in medicine. So let's get into 3D in engineering. This is our new topic, and I'm going to head it over to James. And so, James?
Okay.
What's going on in engineering and 3D or 3D in engineering?
So, as you know, but maybe the viewers don't know,
Oh, hang on. Did I mute you?
Oh, maybe it's me. No? Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
You muted me.
Okay.
Okay.
I can hear you now.
Um, as you may know, but the viewers may not know, I'm just starting to get into the 3D printing. I've got a kind of a secretive project getting going, and I'm always looking at different types of filaments and other ways to integrate, actual engineering into the 3D process. So the first one I wanted to kind of talk about was the conductive filament. Um,
Yeah, and you asked me if I had done or talked about it before. We've had a couple of people on who create conductive filament, and in fact, I actually had a project where I used conductive filament to create a electrostatic box for a sensor for one of my clients. So he needed something with so many ohms per, I don't know, what the centimeter or something like that. So it didn't need to be uh, a low ohmage, that's not right, resistance, but in his case, just something that would be able to leak off any extra charge, and he seemed to like it. So you actually might have something a little different to talk about, right?
yeah, this one's actually highly conductive. I haven't tested it myself, but just from the aspect of having something that can actually, be printed to your design that can conduct electricity is really interesting. Um, I'll be going into, well, that's probably next week, but going into how to maybe get circuit boards and other things printed inside your whatever you're building, so you can print a layer, stick it in there, and then print the second layer on top of it. So that's where conductive filament would come into handy, as you can maybe have those pins or output from your device get to the outside of your whatever you're building out here, and you can connect to it. So uh,
So do you have a website?
yeah. Hold on, let me try to open it here.
And actually, I can do it on my end.
Can you
So
see it on mine, or do I have to share the screen? Sorry.
you would have to, but hang on a second, I can bring it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to have to bring them on the show and make them part of the team. All right, so this is what you had as far as the link is concerned for the highly conductive PLA material. This is done by Protopasta, which we have actually had on our show, and they have talked about it before, and it appears that it's now available. In fact, they sent me, this is the material I actually used. So kind of interesting. All right, so you want to talk a little bit about it? What do you have in mind in using it?
Um, I guess the things I have in mind is trying to encapsulate your electronics into your device, uh, so that it won't get damaged. If you have some sort of robot or other device that's got a Raspberry Pi or Arduino in it, then you could possibly put that into your device itself to protect it. However, you can maybe get an antenna or something out of the device, or outputs to the outside. So I think it has a lot of possibilities. Not only it kind of shows their circuit boards that you can print it, but to me, that's just something you can do anyways. It may be a little easier with the 3D printer, but I would say take it to the 3D level, and you can do some interesting stuff with it.
Yeah, well, that obviously I'd like to see what you have planned for it. As mentioned, we have had them on before, and we talked about ohms per centimeter, and in this case, 15 ohms per centimeter is extremely good. Now, keep in mind that's not 0 ohms per centimeter, so it's not like wire, but a lot of times you can get by with something with the amount of ohms, depending on your circuit. But the other thing that's important behind this, and because I can attest to this, it prints really well. It sticks to the bed really well, which is important from a 3D perspective. And it actually created a fairly good product. And one of the problems I had with a previous conductive filament is that it would jam my hot end, or actually jam within the extruder. That did not happen with their materials. So that's also an important thing. What good is it if you can't actually print with it? However, I was able to print several models with it, and it worked very well. So again, that's Protopasta. And like I said, we've had them on before when they were first launching it. It appears that the product is now available. So I want to add another item that I have that I also forgot. So let me bounce back to my screen.
How many heads can you put on 3D printers? I see 2 a lot, but the more and more I see all these different type of filaments, I'm just like, man, I'd like to add that to my project. And it just seems like I'm stuck with 2 right now.
Well, let's see, who is it? 3D Systems has a 3 extruder version, or 3 hot ends, or I think there's another company you can buy outside versions. But the problem is, as you add to the complexity, because essentially you're wanting to put these all in the same space, you have to identify your G code, which one of your extruders get connected. And the other thing is, your controller has to have the ability to control 3 different stepper motors, because each one's need to extrude their own filament. And a lot of the ones out there may have 2, but it's difficult to find one that does 3. So you may have to make a custom version of it. Then you have to control it and make sure that it all hits the same location properly. And that's an issue. And then sometimes the external environment may also screw up your print. So it's much more complex. And that's why you see 2, it's much more controllable. Anything more than that becomes somewhat of a nightmare. As I said, though, 3D Systems with their Cube Pro X does make a 3 filament version. But again, a lot of these are to do color, maybe not different materials. As we've talked about before, we can use multiple materials, dissolvable materials, so that we can do supports with it. But I don't know exactly what would happen if you use like a conductive with an ABS or a PLA, because they all have different temperature points. So you have to keep that in mind. And plus, how do you prevent crossflow or heat exchange? Because normally they're so close. Are you modifying the temperature of the other filament? So you have to keep all that into consideration as well. And then you have the physical distance between each of them as well, because they're all obviously going to be a little bit different. So that's an issue as well. And so all this has to be taken into consideration, and they add to the complexity. So obviously 1 would be the best, but 2 is something that a lot of people have already figured out how to do properly. Any more than that, I think, is a problem. So let me bounce back to my screen. This, I think, might be of interest to you. One of the things that I saw that was a real big thing at MakerFaire was what they call the Internet of Things. And there's a lot of work being done now of creating what they call nodal and diagramming, where essentially you connect multiple objects together to create code. And I think there's a version for Android done by, I want to say MIT, I don't remember, that you can create actual Android applications using this kind of technique. But this looks really easy, browser-based flow editing, and you can identify a flow of objects so that you can use them to control. And then it says it's a lightweight runtime built on a Node.js, and then I'm assuming the JS is for JavaScript. And here it runs on a Raspberry Pi. And then they show the interaction there. So I don't know any more than this, but I thought it might be interesting to you. I know that there are quite a few. In fact, I covered 2 different people from a training standpoint or a learning sample, which worked very similar to this. You had little blocks that you moved together in order to interact, and they showed lights turning on and off. I can't remember the name of them, but it's one of, if you have a chance, and I'm going to show that here in a minute, I've got all of the interviews and videos that I took at MakerFaire all in a playlist, so you can run through all of them if you've got a couple of hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. I don't know. I was there for a long time. Feet hurt. Now I'm sick. You know, one thing I noticed is that MakerFaire has a lot of little tiny people with a lot of happy faces. And a lot of them came up to me and said, "What is all that stuff you have on you?" And I have a feeling maybe one of those little tiny people had a cold, because now I have a cold. But I actually feel better today. So maybe everything I'm taking is working out.
Sure, blame
All right.
the tiny
So,
people.
yeah, well, tiny people are what makes us keep going.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we would expire as a species. Okay, so on to, what are we at? So Brad is too busy. He actually was going to show off a new 3D printer, which really isn't SLA based, but he might do a little video or may do a live thing, and I'll have him on next week, or do the video tape beforehand and then show it. As mentioned, Chris is not available today, so we won't have the Print Whisperer. So he's already 2 weeks behind. So I know he's got to have a lot of stuff. You know, it's kind of, as some of you are aware of, we all have other types of jobs. And because he's been out so long, he's been kind of juggling things with his shop back in Paso Robles. He's actually traveling like 3 hours to the hospital where his father's at. So, well, like I said, my thoughts are with you, Chris. Hope that you'll be able to make it next week. His father is making progress, but it appears to be a slow direction. So, as mentioned, my products of the week, and then I'll get into the projects in a moment, are the normals that I have in my ear. And then the other one that was very important to me, really doesn't have anything to do with 3D printing. Here's my normals. So I think they're very reasonably priced for the quality that you get. And the most important thing, they conform to your ear. And if you're like me, you have a tendency for they pop out or they don't seem to fit very well. I think that's a great direction. They're high quality, and they've taken a lot of steps to make them really work well. And I use an Android device, and the remote works well, the volume control, as well as the pause play button. So the other thing I want to talk about is this. As you know, I spent a lot of time at MakerFaire, and I got this, I don't know, maybe a year ago, and it's called an EZO Power. And I don't even know if they make this particular model. This powered my media station all day. I got about 7, 8 hours, and I didn't even run the battery down completely. And that is a Windows 8 tablet. That's a webcam. That's my Zoom H5 microphone system, and also an LT USB modem, all through this little device here. And so I can't say enough about it. The cool thing is it has 2 USB ports, 5 volts, as well as a coaxial connector for an output of either 9 volts or 12 volts, so I can run a separate lighting system. I actually had a separate battery, which was fairly heavy, because I think it was still like a wet gel type battery that I used to run my LED lighting system on the front of my system. But this was very useful to me. So hats off. Again, the name of the company, and I think they have it, is EZO. And it was very reasonable. I think it's like $45. But indispensable. If you notice, I converted it on Artcos case and put it on my belt. Like I said, I look like a super geek out there. So projects for me. Let's see. Obviously, MakerFaire was a big one. I want to show you this one, and I'm going to jump to it. I took, using my V.360, a bunch of 360 footage, which is good because for whatever reason, my Canon camera on day 2 didn't give me all the footage. So I lost a lot of it inside. This footage here is the, let me see if I can go full screen with it, and I'll play it, is within the main, what do you want to call it, warehouse, or it's the Make building. And if you're not familiar with the YouTube panoramic view. You can use the WASD keys if you're familiar with gaming to rotate. Since I use a cylinder-based 360, the up and down keys do not allow me to look at it. You just get black space. But you can pan around. It's kind of neat to be able, there's me. And there's I'm actually talking to the people out at HP, the Sprout system. So they had several there. So they were really working with them, and they have a connection with the Dremel 3D printer. So they're really making a lot of headway as far as getting it out there and people to play with it. And kids were having fun with it. It was kind of neat. But it's kind of neat. You can see behind me and look at all these people. No wonder I got sick. And then there's one of the representatives from HP. And then if you go later on in the video, which I'll jump back to, if I can find my cursor. There it is. I thought this is kind of fun. I stopped by my buddy Fred, actually the great Fredini, and he scanned me. So I think that should be in here somewhere. Yeah, it doesn't seem to be moving. One of the things is that, let's see where I'm at here. Yeah, here we are. So there's a great Fredini, or Fred Kahn. Kahn, is that his name? He does 3D scanning. He's been doing it for several years. He used to be kind of like a spokesman for Coney Island. He gave up his job, excuse me, to do this. And so he scans people. Excuse me. James, you might have to take over here. We're almost done. So one of the things he asked me to do is get scanned myself. I thought I would have it ready, but I actually have a full 3D scan of myself from him. So let's see. It's kind of funny. Let's see there. I'm actually on his system, or am I not? No. Well, if I don't get to it, you can watch the video. And I'm actually standing on his turntable with my 360 camera rotating. So if you want a trippy experience, you can get on there with me, rotate around, and then actually move the 360 camera while you're rotating. I think the world will implode if you do that, but it was obviously very fun. This is kind of neat because it really gives you a really interesting experience of what goes on behind you. And in the past, and I haven't really looked at this, people would be like gawking behind me because of my weird setup. And I thought that was kind of fun. But there are 3 of them out there covering day 2 and day 3. So if you have nothing better to do, you can go ahead and look at them. Plus, there's all kinds of other, let's see if I can go out to the playlist. MakerFaire. I think there's like 39 videos. So I cut them up. Obviously, they're the full-length ones if you wanted to see them in real time. Let's see, how many are there? 38. So there's 38 videos, but I cut up a bunch of them so that they're more palatable into anywhere between 4, or actually down to about a minute to 15 minutes, depending on what area. This Dark Light Heroes is kind of cool. They had a, what would you call it, a fashion show that showed a lot of clothing with lights in them, which I thought was neat. But more importantly, they had 2 people on there, amputees, showing off custom prosthetics with lights in them. I thought that was pretty neat. Also very bold. That's why I called them heroes of getting out on stage. One was a double amputee. Both legs were lost, I think, in a motorcycle accident. And she was actually walking, and you really couldn't tell that, and kind of strutting her stuff out on the stage. So I thought that was really cool. Tapogami, if you don't know what I'm talking about, this is trippy. Essentially masking tape gone wild. Then the VR camp, I thought was kind of cool. So you can go ahead and go through all these. You may have seen the Roboti, where they actually had a bunch of these doing, what is it, the gingham style, bunch of little miniature robots. The Nautilus was kind of neat. The Golden Mean was kind of an interesting, it's a husband and wife team who developed this snail. So if you're familiar with Jules Verne or steampunk, imagine a snail that you can drive around in. That's what they built. So all kinds of stuff like this at Maker Faire, which obviously also shows up at Burning Man. And I guess I learned a new term now called burner, which is people who kind of just leech off of other people at Burning Man. So they're called burner. At least that's what his interpretation of it was. Plenty of schools with a lot of great stuff going on. And then there's Monica, who actually was there all 3 days, pretty much by herself at MedXMaker's booth. They're the people out of Stanford. And then, as mentioned, a lot of stuff of the VR. So if you want to see what's going around throughout, you're welcome to look at those. So that pretty much was my project all week, going out there and then dumping all this stuff. That's the sad thing when you have HD video. It takes hours to upload all this stuff, but I finally did it. Luckily, I use Adobe Premiere, and I have kind of a workflow set up that makes the process fairly easy. So let's see, you've got a project.
Yeah.
Something about a 3D motor?
Yeah, 3D motor. Let me see if I can't get this up on my screen this time. Let's see here. Get that over. And let's click this. And I have to pick which screen.
Oh no, he's gone. We've lost him. He hit the wrong button. Okay, well, when he figures out, I'll just keep moving on. So a couple other things that happened this week, and I sadly wasn't able to make it, is SVVR. We lost
It crashed me.
Okay. Well, maybe you can just kind of give us a brief rundown. Was it a video or?
Yeah, you should have the link in the show notes if you want to play it real quick. Yeah.
So go ahead and
it just crashed me. Sorry about that.
Okay.
This was what I was kind of talking about with the conductor filament, and I found how they did this motor very interesting in the fact that they would stop the print midway, add a magnet, stop it again, add some wires, add a magnet, and then you'll see the final product with no magnets, no wires showing, and all it has is a propeller on the top. So, this really got me wondering about, different ways to print some of the engineering stuff that I'm coming up with my project. But I figured I'd share it because I'm sure there's a lot of engineers that are watching the show and trying to figure out how to do different things with 3D printing. So
yeah, it's very unique. And actually, when we were when I was at CES, there was a company in the Adobe booth that they shared space because I guess they've got some Spark funding, and I can't think of their name now, but they have a product that allows it to print materials directly into it. So not only could they do something similar to this, but they could literally print metal into the product and have electronic products all embedded, like we talked about earlier. And I obviously can't remember the name now, but I'll make sure I have it in the show notes. But yeah, it looked like they were using some sort of Stratasys 3D printer. It looks very similar to what Chris had. And yeah, with that being said, yeah, it can be stopped. I don't know how well this would work with other printers that are out there, but it's something to try out. And,
hey, Mike, I'm hearing some music on your side, I think. Or is it on mine?
Must be on your end.
My end. Oh, sorry, it's mine. I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. I'm glad you mentioned it. Sometimes I go through the whole show and I have something going on and nobody tells me. Okay, well, I wanted to bring up two other things. One is the Silicon Valley virtual reality that occurred on Monday and Tuesday, so it's over. And I was hoping to have Paul on, but Paul is in an area that doesn't have good quality connections, so he won't But they had a lot of people in, obviously, many people from Oculus Rift there, and they kind of talked about, let's see what we've got. Yeah, let's see what they can't. Essentially, they had. I don't. They had more information on their website earlier, but they had quite a few people. Hopefully, I'll have him on next week. He can talk about it. But there were a couple of things that they announced there. One is the world's first eye tracking system. So one of the things you can do now is move your head up, down, so forth. And then with external trackers, you can move your body up and down. And then, as you know, with my environment awareness system, you can move around in a 3D space. But there's nothing out there that really tracks your eyes. So that way you can't control the actual location of where your eyes are at. And what's the importance of that? Well, currently right now, you're kind of limited to about 100, 110 degrees of FOV. And that gives you that peripheral, but if you move your eyes, you're only limited to that. But imagine being able to move your eyes and the what do you want to call it? The 3D screen in front of you moves along with it. That expands that so that you could even get a more lifelike experience from that. So I think that could be very important. And then a VR seating and movement control system. And then I think also there was a company that came out with a paper trigger system. And I think they're a Chinese company that, like the Google Cardboard, was a Google input device, like a trigger system. I thought was kind of neat. And I'll bring that up next week. So I thought that was kind of fun. The other thing that's going on, and actually I think, let's see, yesterday was the last day, was the Long Beach Convention Center. You know, this is something Chris goes to on a regular basis. Here we go. And he obviously couldn't go this year. I was hoping that he would be there. But they have some of the big boys talking about stuff and some of the more advanced tools. I mean, this is where the real rapid prototypers hang out, and those that are doing this either for business or large manufacturing sites that are using, you know, the Stratasys 3D systems. So Chris will probably have more to talk about on this because he seems to cover this fairly well. So I will leave that to him. So I didn't have my screen up, but again, the SVVR, they don't seem to have a lot of information on their website. We will have Paul on next week to talk about what had gone on there. But as you know, I'm an avid VR person, also working on my own product. I didn't hear from Brian this week, but he has been fairly busy. Excuse me. So that's about it. We'll have the link so you can look up everything else that might be going on. Sorry about that. Well, I almost made it through the whole show without dying. Well, sorry about that. So on that note, I'm going to close off. You know, when I'm by myself and just have James here, we seem to finish faster. I don't know what that's saying. We'll see what happens when Chris comes back next week. So hopefully he will join us. Like I said, his father is doing much better now.
Yeah, it's good.
But he's out of the woods, but it's going to be a long road. And, well, he's got lots of family there. And as Chris said, the positive out of this is how it brought a lot of people together, which is obviously very important. All right, James. Normally I let Chris give the last word, but I give it to you. So what do you got to say? Up.
Adios.
That's right. You are from San Antonio. All right. Bye.